Hey, it's Dr. K. I'm a California licensed naturopathic doctor and certified sacred medicine woman. Welcome to the Divine Woman Wellness Podcast. This is a show about whole body wellness that is going to support you in finding alignment with your body, mind, and spirit. I believe every woman should have a deeper understanding of her body and soul, and my mission on this show is to guide you through learning about your body, how you can shift your day-to-day life to support health and wellness, while connecting to yourself on a deeper level. These episodes are rooted in naturopathic medicine, vitalism, biohacking, and mysticism, and will guide you towards well-being in body, mind, and soul. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in.
All right. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of the Divine Woman Wellness Podcast. This is episode 10. I am so excited to be recording this episode today. So first off, thank you to all of my regular listeners who are out there supporting me with the podcast. I am just so excited to be sharing this message with you and just information as I learn it and sharing more information that I share with my patients on a regular basis. And as much as I would love to meet you all one-on-one, there are only so many hours in the day, especially in my schedule, so unfortunately I can't meet you all one-to-one for your individual concerns. So this is my way of being able to bring you the information that is generally privy to my patients that I do get to see on a one-on-one basis. So today I'm recording part 2 of the Toxins and Hormones podcast. So today we're going to be talking specifically about toxins in your period products. I know, super scary, at least for me, a little mortified when I was researching a lot of these products and recognizing even, yes, I'm a naturopathic doctor and I make different choices nowadays, but for most of my life, at least my adult menstruating life, I've been exposed to a lot of toxins. And I think let's segue. This is a really good time maybe for a personal story, and I'm sorry, might be a little TMI, but I was one of those girls growing up. Every time I had to wear a pad, it was an absolute nightmare. Not because I couldn't figure out how to use the darn things, but rather every time I had to use one, I would end up with what looked like a chemical rash in my groin. And that's the last thing you want when you have your period. So now you're having to wear pads and you have a chemical rash. And what do you do? Okay, so I switched to tampons, which worked okay. Thankfully, I wasn't having chemical rashes to those, but now in hindsight, as I've done this research, I'm recognizing how many toxicants that my body was being exposed to during that time. And reflecting back, I was having excruciating menstrual cramps. I mean, to the point where it would be out of nowhere, I'm on my period, uncomfortable, and walking down the mall, and suddenly I'm in the fetal position crying in pain because it was that bad. And obviously now I've shifted my menstrual products, and I've changed a lot of things in the inflammation, in my dietary intake, and those all had made some difference, and mostly making dietary changes, but I was still having some cramps. And then I noticed over the years, as I was shifting out of certain menstrual products, I was having less and less pain. And once I started understanding how much or how many chemicals are in our period products, I started realizing how they do affect our hormones and how that could have been a contributing factor for my pain. And which at the worst, honestly, and this is sad to say, I was taking Percocet and it took the edge off, but it didn't make it go away, which for those of you who know, Percocet is actually quite a strong pain medication. That being said, there's hope. Balance your hormones, get the inflammation out of your diet, and then the next step would be actually, or maybe this should be the first step, would be to pull the toxins out of our routines. So go back and listen to episode number 1, in which I discuss some of the toxicants that are hormone disruptors that we use in our everyday life. And then today, let's talk about hormone disruptors specifically, and toxicants, not necessarily just hormone disruptor, but toxicants that are affecting our menstrual health and possibly driving inflammation and creating undue pain that no matter what supplements you're taking or what dietary changes you're making are not resolving. So traditional tampons, pads, and other hygiene products, they may contain potential toxins and chemicals. And I know probably a lot of you are making the best choices you can, and others may be completely uninformed because, again, why would we suspect toxins in period products? And dioxins being one of them. So dioxins are a highly toxic product and they have several adverse health effects. So, and they're in part with chlorine. So it's chlorine and dioxins, I should say. The chlorine is often used in the bleaching process of tampons and pads, which then can lead to the production of toxins. Dioxins are persistent organic pollutants, so things that stay around in the environment, and they're also linked to those health issues, including hormone disruption and endocrine problems. So reproductive issues, fertility issues, immune system suppression, and even certain types of cancers. So we want to make sure and avoid these. And we'll go through, what can we do when we're through all of this and we have a better understanding. How do we get these out of our use, our monthly use? So just hang tight. This is hopefully a shorter episode. But synthetic fragrances, I thought I would highlight that. So a lot of conventional period companies will add fragrances to mask the odor of menstruation, or what we think of is the menstruation odor, which probably nobody can tell. However, unfortunately, these fragrances not only contain toxicants, and they may be harmful and toxic level and disrupting our endocrine, right? Or endocrine system. We don't want to put on perfumes and fragrances on our skin. So why would we want to put them in our vagina where we have highly absorbent tissues? So that's one aspect of it. But then another is actually the allergic reaction, the skin irritation. And then lastly, it actually will modify our vaginal ecosystem. So if you're using conventional hygiene products that have fragrances in there and you have recurrent infections or like this recurrent bacterial vaginosis or candida infections that every month, our body's supposed to house clean during our cycle, but oddly enough, after your cycle, you may have this. It disrupts the ecosystem. It can be highly toxic for the microbiome that's in our vagina. And so when we throw that off, that can have downstream effects. It can cause more potential cervical inflammation and irritation. And again, there's no studies on this, but I'm drawing these conclusions because if we put toxicants close to very sensitive, delicate skin, chronically, that can't be good. It wouldn't surprise me if that's a contributing factor to possibly some cellular changes. Another thing would be pesticide residues. So when we're using menstrual products that don't have or that haven't been grown organically, we actually have the potential for these pesticide residues and glyphosate. And again, our vaginal tissue is highly absorbent. So we're going to bring them into our body, and that definitely, again, inflammatory pathways, how much does that contribute to period cramping? And again, personally, I noticed that when I stopped using these products, that my cramping, even though it had already reduced from all the other changes I made, my cramping had also gotten better after I made some additional changes. So not to forget to mention, but these pesticide residues, and we covered some of those last time in the previous episode, but they include disruption of the endocrine system, which includes the reproductive system. And endocrine system, not just your female hormone system, but your entire endocrine system. And then it has also been linked to potential carcinogenic effects. So we want to make sure and avoid them whenever possible. Now, another big rubric that I want to point out here are the adhesives and the plastics. Yes, hopefully the adhesives are not sticking to your skin, but let's face it, we've all had a pad go sideways and the sticky stuff ended up on our leg. At least I hope I'm not the only one, so if I am, I guess it's me. But then again, the adhesive is still close. There's body heat, which then causes evaporation of volatile organic compounds that might be part of the adhesives, and then plastics. And I don't know about you, but other than the tampon applicator being plastic or the wrappers being plastic, I kind of, did a screeching halt and a take back or a double take. And I was like, wait, why are there plastics in my period products that I'm putting in my vagina or by my vagina? That's the last place I want to put plastic. And as I was doing research for this podcast, I actually found out that there's a large percentage of plastic in your period products, which, yes, breathtaking. Took my breath away. So some pads and panty liners contain those adhesives we talked about, and then the plastic backing that may contain potential toxins like the phthalates, which we discussed last episode. And they're generally used to enhance that flexibility and durability. And something that blew my mind was that there was a study looking at how much plastic is contained in menstrual products. And this is more from an environmental perspective, not from a chemical health perspective. But what I found out is each conventional package of pads contains 36 grams of plastic. Okay, so let's put that into perspective. 2.5 grams is contained in the box and 2.4 grams per pad. That's about 1/5 of a plastic bag. So I kind of went, okay, well, some of that is in the wrapper, but then some of that is actually in the product itself that's right against my skin, and I certainly wouldn't want to put 1/5 of a plastic bag in my underwear, or less appealing even, put it inside my vagina to help me with my menstrual concerns. That's not a place for plastic. So now you might be thinking, okay, well, I only use tampons, and so I'm avoiding plastics. And unfortunately, even in the tampon itself, there are plastics, or there have been plastics found. So in non-organic tampons, obviously pesticides from the non-organic cotton that's been used, and then plastics, some chemical fragrances depending on the brand, and then of course we have the single-use packaging, which isn't great for the environment. And it's really interesting when I do this research to discover how little thought maybe goes into the creation of these products, and how little revision there's been since we've developed these products. And now thankfully we have organic cotton pads and organic tampons, and I did look into that, and mostly they seem pretty clear of these toxicants, so those are a safer option. With tampons, we still have the same toxic shock syndrome potential, so make sure and change your tampon. Other alternatives include the menstrual cup. The Diva cup is one brand. There's many other brands, but that's one that we associate with a particular product. Those are great because those are medical grade silicone, which at this point in time we do believe is inert. We use it a lot in our kitchen. I'm always cautious when we use one particular thing over and over again in many different places. We're still learning. Silicone's been around for a while, but then there's also the whole silicone breast implant illness and autoimmune reactions to silicone. So I did use a cup for a while. I kind of love-hate relationship with it. Occasionally I'll use it if other things are not practical. So again, moderation. Okay, so other options are organic cotton reusable pads, and those are really nice because you can launder them. So just, I would say, get some very nice organic cotton pads. And then the next option is period underwear, and I am one of the biggest fans of period underwear. It has honestly changed my life for the better. I noticed that once I switched to period underwear, my period kind of got lighter, a little bit more controlled, and after a few months of using them, it's amazing. My body actually kind of regulated to mostly release menstrual fluid while I was using the restroom and not just randomly throughout the day. We all know that feeling. It is just not a fun feeling. I think no matter how much you love your period. Now, for me, because my body has adapted to a much lighter period and actually releasing it, I do have to use the restroom a little bit more often during that time, but releasing it when I'm using the restroom, I don't need it as much anymore. So my body has regulated and adapted once I stopped shoving things up in my vagina to catch my menstrual fluid. I know that sounds a little crass, but that's the truth of it. And we're all ladies here. We may or may not be menstruating, but I think it's good to have that conversation. And what works for me may not work for you. So I'm just giving you my perspective. And I would love if you hopped over on social media at divine_woman_wellness, and we could start a little conversation around this and just normalize having that conversation. What works for me? What doesn't work for me? What works for somebody else? What have your experiences been? And I think if we start normalizing it, then it's just going to become a natural part of conversation. So back to period underwear, because this is where I want to make a huge, wave the flag. Hello, let's talk about some caveats here. So at the beginning of, I think it was this year, was it 2023, January, where there was the whole thing about the PFAS and the period underwear with Thinks and the lawsuit and the settlement eventually. And it was really frustrating for me because I will say I did initially purchase some Thinks underwear amongst a few other brands that I had tried, and I did recommend them to my patients. And now, unfortunately, there were PFAS found in Thinks and several other brands. There is a great blog, I think, by Mamavation. So there's a wonderful blog on this whole topic written by Mamavation, and they did follow up on the lawsuit with Thinks, and they tested independently several other brands and ordered them in a level of PFAS exposure. So I will actually direct you over to their website since they did such a lovely job of walking you through it. Now, with the PFAS, it is so important to avoid those. And just like I mentioned, we want to avoid them in our, clothing and our furniture as much as possible. We definitely want to avoid them in our period underwear. So backing up a little bit, PFAS, what are they? They're forever chemicals. They're per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. So they generally will test for fluorine in these products because that is highly associated with the presence of PFAS. So this independent company did the testing to help us identify which period underwear is free of these PFAS. And previously I did mention the Oekotech 100 or Standard 100 certification. And as I learned, there are a few exceptions, and there may still be some very small trace amounts or certain types of PFAS permitted, even with the Oekotech Standard 100 certification. So I would I would defer to Mamavation for their amazing list that they compiled on period underwear that is safe and free of PFAS. Now, some other things to take into consideration, and where I do like looking at the Oekotech 100 Standard 100 certification, is for understanding what other materials have been used. So we want to make sure our period underwear is organic, of course, so we're avoiding pesticides, herbicides. We also want to avoid antimicrobial agents. So it's very interesting, right, it makes sense. We all think we need to control the odor, which again, the odor is usually due to the oxidation between the blood and whatever fragrance we're adding. So we really don't need to deodorize any of our hygiene products, but there are still some companies who are on the train, I guess, of minimizing bacterial growth during menstruation, which your body is flushing out. There shouldn't be any bacterial growth happening that's abnormal. There is no odor to control unless we're causing things that would create an odor. So even silver, there are some fabrics that are silver lined or silver infused, they can actually also negatively impact the vaginal microbiome. So I thought I would just put that out here. I know that's not a toxicant, but I think is still pertinent when you're doing your research on what types of period underwear you would like to utilize. Other things to take into consideration are the dyes and colorants that can be used in some of the period underwear, and those can also contain chemical substances which may have things like heavy metals or other chemical toxicants in them. And so we don't want to absorb them through our skin, or again, they could be contributing to a rash. And then absorbent material, and this is kind of where the PFAS situation comes in, but there are also synthetic fibers such as polyester or nylon as the absorbent liners. So again, the Mamavation website that I'll link below did a fabulous job in researching the companies that they do recommend, and so I will just highlight their recommendation. They have several that are ranked, and I think that's really lovely. But yes, we don't need all these things as part of our period products. So what do we do? Right? So I think that's an important thing to highlight. So again, we want to be sustainable. So anytime we can avoid throwaways in our period products and our hygiene products, that's great for the environment. So I would always encourage that. If you are using things that are a one-time use, organic cotton is the best way to go. There are a couple companies that are plastic free, that are all plant fiber based, which would be very safe, that they also use organic cotton, no dyes, no bleaches, no chlorine. So those are great options. So if you see any and or all of those words on the box, that would be a good to go. And that goes mostly for tampons and pads. And then other options do include organic cotton reusable pads that you can just put in the laundry. And I'll just run a separate load. I always think about it like the reusable diapers I used for my daughters. And you just wash them, sanitize them, and well, hang them up to dry. And that's it. A lot of the companies will send you care instructions, how to launder them, what detergents to use and not use, because it does affect some of the products. And then lastly, we have the period underwear, which again, I think is a lovely sustainable option, but we do need to do our research and understand what we're putting between our legs and in our vagina for our period health. And we want to make sure that we avoid chemicals, irritants, toxicants, anything that's unnatural, from disrupting our hormones from one of the most delicate tissues we have in our body. All right, so that was it for today's episode. I'm really glad we did a 2-part episode here because I really wanted to make sure that I could highlight some of the items or the toxicants and chemicals found in your hygiene products, your menstrual hygiene products, and how they could be affecting you. So if you've been working with your doctor, or even if you've been doing research by yourself and you've been having hormonal imbalances, irregularities, painful menstruation, things like that, I would take a look at your period hygiene products to see if they may be part of the problem, especially if you're having significant cramping. You should not be having significant cramping. So do what you can to improve your hygiene health and make sure we keep toxins out of our period products. Keep our hormones safe and sacred. And with that being said, just a reminder, I have a newsletter that is coming out now. So if you want to go ahead and sign up for my newsletter, down below in the show notes, there's a link. You'll actually get my toxin-free living ebook, and I will be updating that shortly to include some of the information we discussed today, because previously I don't know that I even had looked at how our period hygiene products could be affecting our toxin levels in our bodies. So that update will be coming out soon. Once I have the updated ebook ready to go, I will be updating the link and I will be sending it out. If you've already signed up for my newsletter, anytime I go ahead and create a freebie, you will automatically receive that. So just keep an eye out for it. And then I also have the wait list for the 28-day gut and hormone reset, because now that we are getting empowered about our hormones, we understand them a little bit better, we're understanding how toxins are affecting our body. Well, what do? We get rid of them, right? So we rebalance our gut, our microbiome, because that is very important as part of the detoxification process as a whole, and resetting our hormones. It's really difficult to reset hormones without addressing the gut, because we do eliminate and process so much through our gut. And then we have our microbiome, which actually has something called the estrobolome, which is actually the estrogen metabolizing component of the microbiome. So I think it's so important to address both of those together. Okay, so remember to go ahead, and I would absolutely love if you could rate my podcast here on iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you're listening. Go ahead and rate it. And if you would review and take a screenshot of that and post it on social and tag me, I would be so beyond grateful. I love all the kind words I'm receiving, and it really helps me feel so encouraged to continue providing this information for you. And if you have any ideas for podcasts, if there's something that you want to learn about that you would like me to do an episode on, go ahead and DM me. Again, my Instagram handle is at divine_woman_wellness. And you can find me there. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM. If you want to work with me, I have links below, and we can do a quick 15-minute call and figure out what works best for us to work together. I have several different options. I also have a bunch of really cool courses coming out, so stay tuned. And for today, I think that's a wrap. I'll talk to you next week. Much love. Ciao.